So you were saying that you had a production company there?
Yeah, we one of our big sponsors is Savings Bank of Danbury, and they wanted to film a commercial of some of their volunteers helping. We have a big delivery on Wednesdays, so they wanted some of their volunteers to be filmed helping unload the truck. So, I said fine, and I expected maybe it was going to be 4 or 5 people. I mean, Savings Bank of Danbury is not a big bank, but they
Right.
showed up with a massive truck and about 30 people just to film a 5-second commercial. It took hours, and that delivery truck was 2 hours late as well. So it was like,
Oh my gosh. That's Savings Bank of Danbury that's around the corner from you,
it
yes?
is, and they're fantastic neighbors and supporters, and they support us financially as well. So whatever they wanted, the chairman was there, chairman of the bank was there to give us another check. So it was quite a big day, but it could have gone a little more smoothly. But that's show business, I guess.
That is what it is. Yes.
Well, that's
Yes.
what that's why I'm wearing my shirt. This is last year's commemorative Daily Bread shirt, so we all had to
Wow. That
spit
is
ourselves out.
great. Tell me, what is the story behind your passion in creating Daily Bread Food Pantry?
Well, I mean, to be clear, I didn't create it. I just came along on in later. It was founded in 1984, so it's been around a long time, well before I showed up. But it was very small. Well, it had very small beginnings, then grew very slowly, really, until COVID hit, and then it completely exploded in terms of, as you would expect. I mean, we weren't that unusual in terms of the increase in numbers that we saw, but not most, a good number of pantries shut down. They didn't want to take the risks and blah blah blah
Wow.
blah blah. But we stayed open. We just moved everything outside, and that's how we've done all of our big distributions since day one of COVID. So we never missed a distribution, and a lot of our volunteers at that time were in the older end of the age spectrum. They typically came from local churches and one thing or another. And of course, they couldn't continue because they were in the most vulnerable groups. But
Definitely.
again, fortune smiled on us because lots of people were put on furlough or lost their jobs permanently, and they wanted something to do. And we had a great influx of new, younger volunteers that could step up and take a little bit of a chance. And so that's how we managed to continue. And in fact, we got most of those, but not most, a good number of those folks, even if they're back working again, have still stayed with us and still volunteers. So it was good. And
Wow.
I'd only started volunteering at Daily Bread about a year before that, just shortly after I retired from my regular job. So yeah, so that's how I came along. And then the former president decided she'd had enough, and he said, "Oh well, I'll run the thing. It's just for a little while, but once you get in, it's very hard to get out."
Gosh. Well, I came upon you because I was looking for a place in Danbury, Connecticut. I was doing a house sit, and I've written a book, Grants Made Easy, and I knew that I could find a place through pantries, foodpantries.org
Mhm.
locally. And I found you through that. And I'm so, so grateful that you gave myself and my son access to the pantry. And it was tremendous. You saved me a ton in shopping because we did a fill the gap shopping the day after, and it was like $50. No, actually, it's $50.
Oh, it's
And
yeah.
you provided so much more than that shopping did. So I just want to thank you so much.
Well, it's nothing. I mean, that's what we do.
It was tremendous.
So yeah, no, and you did hit on the day when we had slightly better food. I mean, but that wasn't completely exceptional. I mean, that's a fairly standard type of distribution that we can offer almost everybody. So, but I'm always pleased when we have, a really good selection of especially fresh produce and proteins and dairy and all
Oh,
the rest
that
of it.
was amazing. The chicken, the ground, was it ground beef? No, it was chicken thighs, and it was also Purdue patties.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, It
Hmm.
was really, really
Well, we got
great.
some great lamb shanks in the pantry today, and some nice
No,
pulled pork as well. So if you want to step by, please do.
wow, that's very cool. That's very, very cool. Do you have, tell me, do you have a website?
Oh yeah, yeah. You haven't looked at
Okay.
that website? Yeah, that's one of my little, side projects to maintain something that's kind of funny and entertaining and informative, of course. But yeah, there's lots of fun stuff. There's all the best part of the website, I think, other than the information that's on it, is if you look at our archive of newsletters. I think there's a lot of interesting information there, and that's my little. I love it. Only comes out every 2 months, but I the pantry. So have a look at that. Dailybreadfoodpantry.com. That's a URL. So it's pretty easy.
Okay. Okay.
And you can go
Perfect.
play daily. We have I don't know if you've ever played Wordle, but
I have not. No.
we have a version of that called Breadle. Oh, yeah. Oh, you never played Wordle? Oh my goodness. It was
I
it was
have
totally
not.
the craze of 2022. It's a word game. Anyway, you can go onto our website and play our version, which is called Breadle. Which
Oh, I
is
love that.
right. Yeah. Anyway, so that's that. But yeah, so I wasn't, at all. I knew nothing about the food insecurity business when I started. I thought I'd just, help stack the shelves and do the little distributions we used to have pre-COVID, maybe one day a month. That's how it was sold to me. And then we kind of grew, and I kind of got interested at every level. The people that volunteer for the pantry are funny. Many of the guests are funny. So, I get a lot of entertainment from the whole thing. Plus, I did get sort of interested on a more conceptual level of the whole food insecurity infrastructure of the country, where, the Daily Bread and pantries like us, we're at the really very bottom of the feeding chain of food pantries, of that food insecurity network. But that's an interesting perspective, and by the same token, you see there's a hierarchy above you that supports the whole enterprise, which I find that, well, for the moment at least, endlessly fascinating. I haven't gotten tired of the thing yet, but we'll
It
see.
is. It's unbelievable. I was starting to learn about food rescue the other day, and the more that I dig, the more I find.
Right.
So for people who have absolutely no idea that these opportunities are available, what would you say to them
Well, if it depends on who the audience is. So people who want food, I'd say, look,
who want food, who
there's
need
a
food?
lot of resources out there. Not just pantries. Obviously, the pantry system, at least in theory, is designed mainly for relatively short-term support while people get onboarded with the more systemic support that's available for
Yes,
folks facing food insecurity, like food stamps, SNAP, for example, if they're eligible. So
correct.
the way
Oh, this is terrible.
relatively easy.
I
It
lost
came
you
back for a
again.
second.
Okay,
Oh, we're back. I can see you again. Now you're moving around. Can you hear me?
okay, good. Now moving around.
Okay, all right, all good. Of course, now I've forgotten what I was saying. Oh yeah,
So
so
we were
we're just
talking about SNAP,
yeah, so
and
we're one leg of the food insecurity support system. Really, what I think of almost the emergency, a very temporary leg, or people for one reason or another that aren't eligible for the more systemic support like SNAP and WIC and all of those programs. Um, and yet most of the folks that come to the pantry do in fact come for relatively short periods of time.
yes.
Typically they faced a job loss or an illness or something, blah blah blah. It doesn't take much to tip many people into
Oh,
a
yes.
situation where they need help with their food bills. It's just one misfortune and boom, you're really in trouble. So that's mostly a profile of the guests that come to us. And then of course there's a lot of folks that have relatively recently arrived in the country that probably are not eligible for SNAP food stamps, and that sort of more systemic government support. So that's really the other group of folks that we serve, and that's really something that's particularly grown since COVID. The demographic profile of the folks that we serve has changed from relatively representative of the population of Danbury to much more heavily skewed towards the Latino Hispanic community. Now
Right.
probably 90% Hispanic Latino. So
How
yeah.
many families would you say that you're serving now?
Well, it depends on what period. So again, there's some great stats on our website. We serve
Okay.
about 600 families per week. So and then we distinguish between what we call unique guests and repeat guests. So it's about 600 per week. So you extrapolate that. And in terms of over the course of a year, and again, I'm talking off the top of my head, I could look at the stats on the website, but that's about 4 or 5 thousand unique families. So a lot of the folks come relatively regularly, but there's a constant churn as people find a better paying job or get over whatever hump that they needed to come for. But yeah, so last year, well, let me just pull our website up and I'll give you
Okay. Oh,
the
that's great.
things. Hold on a sec. Do that.
We can do a share screen.
Oh,
So
okay. Okay.
you can share the screen.
Okay, I'm gonna share my screen. Whoops. I'm gonna share my entire desktop, I think, to start off with.
Okay.
Okay, can you see me?
I
I
do.
can see the screen.
I do. I
Yeah,
do.
so some of these, so these are this is some of the movie action that was going on. It's like you can see it was like
I
completely
love
crazy.
it.
I know, like it's like how many people do you need to shoot a 10-second commercial?
I love it.
Anyway, it was kind of fun.
Tell me a little bit more about how this works in terms of the sponsor and the what they gain from
Well, yeah, this is very, I say that. So there's a sponsors page on our website, which we can just quickly go to. So this is the home page, and it's a little bit about us, a little about me. So these are some of our major sponsors. Our biggest sponsor by far is the Buck Foundation. That's the guy that started Subway. And he
oh
is a very, I mean, he's dead now. He died 2 years ago. Dr. Peter Buck. He was actually a physicist, unbelievably, and then basically invested in Subway at the get-go. The first investor was a partner, and so he made a giant amount of money, and supports just about every charitable cause in Danbury. So
wow.
these guys are, certainly the biggest financial contributor, but most banks, they all chip in. This isn't quite up to date, but we have some relatively solid support from local businesses, the banks, especially Savings Bank and Union Savings Bank. And then it's private foundations that supply most of the cash money that we need to run the operation. So we have some fairly significant partners to help us do what we do, but we need it. I mean, we blow through a fairly significant amount of money every year, either buying food or just keeping the lights on. So
Now
we
I'm noticing that I don't see any food partners. Am I correct?
No, our food bank partner is Connecticut Food Share, so they're not listed on this page because I don't count them as a sponsor. We're an agent of Connecticut Food Share,
I
uh,
see.
so and also Midwest Food Bank as well. So we work with two food banks, but then they're in a kind of separate category, if you will, of support. I think acknowledge them somewhere or another, but not on this page. Anyway, so I was going to give you some stats. So whoops, come on, let's see. Daily Bread in the news. Okay, so newsletters, I think, is where we have a little 2022 report.
Oh, that's great.
And so that's how this is like just an interesting snapshot of our guest numbers going up over the last 2 years, which is just a crazy acceleration. It just continues to go up.
Unbelievable.
So we handed out over 1 million pounds of food in 2020.
Oh my gosh.
One and so we served 3,426 unique families, which was again was 24% more than in 2021. Had 162 distributions, and let's see, we had 22,000 guest visits. So as I say, most people will come for some period of time, but while they're coming, they're typically coming 3, sometimes even 4 times a month. So
Right.
that's how we get to, the 22,000. It's just a
How
multiplication of the unique families times the number of times they come.
how are they finding out about you?
For our guests, I have to tell you, it's mainly word of mouth.
Wow.
I just say that because the vast majority come from that Latina community, they basically tell each other. I mean, obviously, we have the website, we do social media, we work with United Way, we work with all these social service
Oh,
agencies,
that's
but
great.
the reality is it is word of mouth that gets people to know. So, one person will go and they'll tell their neighbor and they'll tell their neighbor and they'll tell their neighbor, and that's how it kind of works in the community.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah,
Wow.
so I mean, obviously we're listed on 211.org and all those places, but based on somewhat sketchy data gathering that we've done, those sites don't drive a lot of the folks towards us, and certainly nothing like the amount that get driven towards us by simple word of mouth. Yeah.
This is amazing. This is just amazing.
So yeah, so there's a few more stats in there too, and we are the biggest, even though we have this tiny building, and there are about 10 or 11 other food pantries in the greater Danbury area. We're bigger than all of them combined in terms of the numbers of people that we serve. That's largely because we have a fantastic volunteer base. We have over 200 active volunteers, and we've been able to maintain their interest. As I say, as we've gone through COVID, and often, them going back to work, and they still want to take a day off and come and volunteer at the pantry. So that's very gratifying.
Yes. What does a typical week look like for you in terms of setting up and preparing for the pantry and
Yeah,
actually
so
stocking?
so that's a really great question, and I'm glad you asked it because the actual distributions are the tip of the iceberg. So for
Yes.
me, each week starts about 10 days before that week, and that's when I start to order the food that I think
Right.
we'll need. The food banks that we work with, generally require you to order food for delivery about 10 to 14 days in advance. So given that's about 80 to 90% of the food we distribute, that's when I start to plan. And they have a very complicated ordering system, which is covered in this newsletter, which is a bit like playing Hungry Hungry Hippos, if you've ever played that
Yes.
game,
Yes.
because you're in competition with all the other food pantries in the state to grab as much food as you can as quickly as possible using their online ordering system. So that process begins for, say, any given week about 10 days before the week starts. And I'm online ordering as much food as I possibly can. And then once I've locked that down, and again, it's still in the week before, I'm thinking about, well, what else do we need to buy or source from somewhere else to fill in the gaps? Typically, the food bank will not have eggs, they'll not have milk, they'll not have, some of the basics that we like to be able to offer. So typically, it's a question of ordering those from commercial wholesalers and then
Wow.
figuring out how we're going to get it delivered, because up until a week ago, we didn't have any of our own transportation. Now we have a brand new electric van, which I just took delivery of last
Amazing.
week, which we pressed
Absolutely
into
amazing.
service. So that's really going to help us. Before that, we were relying on volunteers with pickup trucks to do all of that, extra.
And speaking of that, I remember too that when I had gotten the email indicating that you had given me access and I had an appointment for the pantry,
Mhm.
you also offered the opportunity to have a delivery done which was shocking to me.
Yes, yeah. So that's a relative. So we started that in 2022, last year, and that's done in partnership with DoorDash. So it's a relatively small part of what we do because it's very administratively burdensome in terms of uploading the information into the DoorDash system. Typically there's a glitch in their own system, and then collecting the required amount of data from people, who request home delivery from our site. Our homepage basically looks like this. So what we say is you can choose how to receive the food. The vast majority of people come to the twice weekly distributions, which is the way they do it there. Then you can make an appointment to shop, which is what you did. And then we
Yes,
have the home delivery with DoorDash. And both of these two things are reserved through our website. So it's a kind of interactive. But, this will serve 600 people. This will serve maybe 40 people a week, and this only serves 20. And that's largely
20.
because these two things are not scalable. It's very difficult to
Yeah,
scale those two things. Whereas, we can pre-pack and hand out food, to 600 people in about 4 hours, 5 hours, whereas these things take a lot more time, and they're more volunteer intensive per person served. But it's a much better experience. So
yes,
I'd love to be able to do more of this, but the major problem that we have actually is not volunteer constraint. It's just the size of our building. It's just not big enough, nor do we have permission from the church that's next door to use the building, for anything more than a relatively limited amount of time. So that's why we can't at the moment expand those two sides of our operation, even though it is a much better experience for everybody.
right. This is just absolutely amazing. What would you like to, what insight would you like to leave people with in terms of food access to the pantry?
Yeah, I'd sort of like to say for anybody that, look, we don't typically deal with starving people or people that are, literally facing health issues because of not enough food. And that's not the business we're in. We are in the business of trying to provide folks with assurance that they needn't worry about spending every last dollar at the grocery store just to put
Mhm.
enough food on the table, and also to be able to provide folks with quality, healthful food that they may be reluctant to purchase with their own money because they can buy calorie dense processed food, and that will tide them over and get them the basic calories they need, but ultimately may result in longer term health issues, and they really should not be feeling that they're forced into that choice. They can use our programs to provide them with a much more healthful diet, and no one should feel remotely concerned that they're either taking food from others because
Mm.
they don't deserve it or whatever. We're literally here to help anybody who has any concerns about being able to feed their families, whatever.
That's such an extraordinary kindness that
Uh,
the level of service that you're providing. So just want to thank you. Where can
well,
people
yeah, you understand. You no need to thank me. I do
I mean,
I
I
do this.
mean, I can't even imagine not thanking you. You've been so helpful to
That's very
myself
kind.
and my
Uh,
son. So
not at all. I mean, we've done nothing really for you. I mean, you've only come once. Come on, come 9 or 10 times, and then I feel like we've actually done you some good. Because as I say, most people don't come for very long, but by the same token, most folks will come for 2 or 3 months on
right.
a relatively consistent basis
Just enough to get a little bit of a leg up.
to get a little bit of a leg up. And then there are some folks who, for whatever reason, need a much more permanent, need more permanent support from us, and we're happy to do that too.
Yes.
That's I'd say we don't ever ask why folks need the help. Everyone's got their own story. Some people are happy to share it. Most people just would like to get the food and get the heck out of it, and that's fine. Hopefully we try and do everything with a welcoming atmosphere, and have volunteers. I mean, I always say my main focus is on the volunteers. If you make the volunteers happy, then that contentment will flow through to the guest experience. So that's
Yes.
kind
Well,
of
it shows. It shows
my
everything. Everyone was so cheerful and so gracious when we were there. So it made my day.
Oh, honestly, really, it was nothing. And I mean, by the same token, Andrew, I'm very proud of what the pantry's done, especially during the COVID period. It really was amazing and very heartwarming to see how so many people were prepared to step up to the plate and help their neighbors out. That's really when the whole enterprise resonated with me to the point where I said, okay, I want to get more involved with
Mm.
this thing because it just was so very heartwarming. And look, my background is a cold-hearted corporate lawyer. I mean, wouldn't have dreamt that this was something I'd be doing, in retirement. I never even occurred to me. But the people I've
Wow.
met, both on the volunteer side and the guest side and the sponsor side, it's just been a wonderful experience. It really has.
That's amazing. Well, unfortunately, I have a really short time. I don't know why this is showing that I only have 5 minutes left. But what I wanted to do is, and if you're willing to, if you want, we'll just pop into another meeting. But what I wanted to see was some pictures of the
Mhm.
inside of the pantry so people could get an idea of the food that you have and the quantities and the space and all of that.
Right. And I can shoot you some of those. Again, if
Okay.
you go onto our website, you'll see a good chunk. You can just screen grab them, but I can certainly send some on to you. That's no big deal at all.
Okay. That sounds
I gotta
perfect.
say that my main there's nothing that's super photogenic, and there's a couple of reasons about it. One is it's actually quite difficult to get good, attractive looking shots inside the pantry because it is so small. Uh,
Yes.
and then the other thing that really kills me is that most of our produce ends up getting, and when it's on display, is already for our big distributions, is already packed in plastic bags, which is not great. It's the
Hmm.
only way we can deal with the numbers of people we have. So often there's all this great produce staged outside, but in plastic bags. Now it breaks my heart to see all of that,
Yes.
environmentally insensitive stuff. But for the moment, at least, it's the only way we can do it. Anyway,
So
I can
true.
certainly send you some stuff, and if you
Okay.
like
Okay.
else on it,
Definitely.
no
Definitely.
worries at all.
Oh, I'm so excited. So one last thing. Tell me, how would someone reach you to say, I would like to know if I can get access to the pantry?
Okay, so we have a contact page, and that email that you use, contact the dailybreadfoodpantry.com. All those come straight to me, and if you need any kind of individual support, I'll be there to answer those as quickly as I possibly can. Or they just show up to the pantry. There's enough information on the website if they can have access to the website to get them to be able to know what times we're open and where the place is. And then when they get there, as you found out, it's a relatively simple registration process. And everybody has to get registered, whether you come, with an appointment or you come to our mass distributions, but it's a very quick process. And when we're having our mass distributions, we have 5 or 6 people working computers to register people as quickly as possible.
What if they have a larger size family? So let's say someone has a family larger than 4 individuals.
Yeah,
Is
so I
10.
mean that's a good question, and there's not a fantastic answer to that in the sense that because of the way we pre-pack everything, we don't have the ability to flex the amount of food to a great extent based on the size of the family. That said, if someone says, "Look, I've got a very large family, or I've got a large family, and I really don't have any food in the house," then those folks can always get extra food, but they'll just have to tell us, and we'll do our best to give them food. But the reality is, honestly, Andrew, is everyone gets as much food as they can carry away. So
Yes,
it's
which is
very difficult,
enormous.
especially during the mass distributions, to give people more food because. Yes, we do have volunteers who can help carry to their cars, but we don't have enough volunteers to carry food for everybody. That would be insane. So, the major constraint in terms of the amount of food that people get is literally how much they can carry. Many pantries, especially, in other less urbanized locations, work with drive-through systems, and they're
Mhm.
obviously aren't constrained in that way. But one of the unique things about Daily Bread is we do give out a lot of food, but we're a walk-up pantry, and that's relatively unusual. There are a few other walk-up pantries in Danbury, but typically they don't get anything close to the amount of food they get, nor can they come as frequently as well. Typically, pantries allow only one visit per month, which is a
That's
lot better
true.
than nothing. But
Yes,
if you've got a big family, that no matter how much food you can carry away, that's not going to really put a big dent in your food budget. So a Daily Bread, because we allow people to come 3 times a month, I think that does start to have a material impact on on the amount of food that you can source from us, and a commensurate reduction in what you're actually spending on food. So yeah, so that's basically my answer about the size of the family thing. It's not perfect. I would love to be able to flex that a little bit more. And certainly for the folks that come and shop in the pantry, we can do that. But again, that's a relatively small portion of the folks that we're doing.
right.
Yeah.
Well, it's a big help, and that's really what matters. And the fact that you've been able to serve so many families and sustain through all of COVID, that's so amazing. It's
Yeah, yeah.
brilliant.
It is amazing. I think that but what's particularly amazing now, and I think is important for everyone to realize, is that inflation and the cost of living has caused